Okay, and action.
Cinemas. Magical buildings that allow us to immerse ourselves in countless curious worlds. To experience lives we might not ever get the opportunity to experience for ourselves, or sometimes just to help us understand our own lives that little bit better. But for so many of us, the cinema is more than a building. It's a place that molds us, inspires us, and sometimes even changes us when we least expect. And we've missed it a lot. But now the cinema is back. So come with me now as I, Perry J. O'Halloran, take you inside some of this country's greatest independent cinemas to explore their stories, their secrets, and more than just a few of our favourite things. Because if you think that you've missed the cinema, just wait till you see how much the cinema has missed you. There's a lot to like about the Kent seaside town of Broadstairs, but if you're into your cinemas, it's got a little something that you're gonna love. And today, the owners are letting us in. Has it all been smooth sailing, or is it?
Oh, 100%. No, it really hasn't. But I mean, it's basically, I think maybe the first year of any business is hard work, but in a cinema, when you're trying to do a lot of things, you're trying to build an audience, you're trying to maybe change the programme, there's so many things to bear in mind. But honestly, there are a couple of things we might have changed, but overall, it's just the way it is, and we've just been really happy to have the opportunity. I mean, it is quite a privilege to be looking after a cinema like this.
You've got a great community that I'm sure makes that slightly easier than it might be otherwise.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the cinema was here for the best part of 50 years before we arrived, and there's people coming today who were coming 50 years ago, and there are people who are coming with their children when they came when they were children. So there's lots of loyalty, and there's lots of people who've actually moved to this area recently who really would value a cinema like this. So yeah, there's lots of local support.
So this is the first thing that people see when they come through the doors?
Yes, it's tiny. It's really, really small. So when they come in, they're straight into the box office. We have a lovely automatic ticket machine, which we actually use the clunk out tickets. We used the clunk out tickets till only about a year and a half ago, and then finally digitised, which has been a good thing overall. But people used to love the clunk out. They couldn't believe that clunk out tickets were still operating, you know, well into the 2020s sort of thing. So that was a lot of fun. But yes, so when you've bought your tickets here, basically you just have to shuffle along our tiny foyer to the concessions, and we've just got, you know, a basic but classic selection, as it were, in terms of popcorn and pop and coffee and booze. The building was converted into a cinema in the mid-60s, and this is the shape that was created then. And it's been prettified and smoothed and organised, and exactly where the box office is has shifted a couple of feet that way or a couple of feet that way. Basically, it's been the same for about 50 years, the shape of it, and there's very little room for manoeuvre.
But it looks like a brand spanking new building.
Well, we've had it painted, in your honour. Now, we've had it painted recently, so it feels nice and fresh, but who knows what you could do with £1 million with this place. But we just try and keep it as nice and fresh and welcoming as possible.
I'm coming up. Oh wow. This is special.
When we took it on, it was already digital. So, but we do have footage of this space with a 35mm projector in it. And literally, when the cinema was converted in the 60s, they put the projector in and they built the projection box around it. So when they changed them over, they literally had to unscrew the projector and send it down the ladder bit by bit, and the same bringing this one up. So we're very glad we weren't involved in any of that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, this is a fantastic machine. It's actually more powerful than we need for the reach that we've got. So it does a fantastic job, and you know, we have great people looking after it to make sure that the picture remains super nice and crisp. So
it feels like a very old school romantic profession, and it's something that feels a little bit like it's dying out.
Yeah, honestly, it really is. I mean, as soon as the digital screen network kind of had some money behind it and got going, sort of 10, 15 years ago, that everybody knew that was the way it was going. But one of the nice things is that there are now courses, there aren't many of them, there's a couple of courses I think which are ensuring that the proper projection skills are not being lost. And there are some cinemas like the Prince Charles where they still will show off 35mm, and it's amazing. You go and see one of those and you're just like, oh yeah, and it feels different and it looks different, and not that you're looking for bad projection and sprocket holes, but there is something physical about it that you're not getting with this. But then in terms of cinematographers and what they can do with digital, it's astonishing what is digital. So as long as we don't lose 35mm, digital's amazing.
And I think even the Prince Charles Cinema, in all its brilliance, knows that those 35mm presentations, people go there for the warmth and the scratches and just the coolness of it all. So it's absolutely something that we shouldn't allow to die out, but that's so cool that the art hasn't been forgotten and it's still being trained.
Totally, and I think that some cinemas, this projection box is so small, we literally couldn't have kept both projectors in here. But I think some, they haven't got rid of them. They're not servicing them, they're not looking after them, but they've still got them. So, and that's potentially, literally, because it was easier to hang on to them and shut them out because they're such a pain to get rid of. So, I think, it's not necessarily going to come back as a parallel normal, but it hasn't disappeared.
A parallel normal, I have to remember that for another show title, that's brilliant. So I guess now that we've seen where all of the magic is projected from, there's only one thing left for us to see at the Palace, and that's the auditorium itself. Can we have a look at the Palace auditorium?
Love to, let's go.
Brilliant, okay, I now need to get down this ladder again.
Yeah, I know, sorry about that. Left foot first. So this is the auditorium.
Oh, it's so nice and homely. I feel like cosy walking into here, it's nice.
It is, it's really cosy. The chairs and the curtains were here when we arrived, and we painted it red and changed the lights, but the curtains up the side are actually where the original windows were when this was just one big open hall, when it was full of light until the mid-60s, and then it was all blacked out in the 60s. So the curtains are where the windows are outside. So we've kind of got a sense of what the building once was, even though now, no natural light allowed.
Right. Of course, yeah. It's lovely, right down to the nice glowing lights. It feels a little bit like being in a Paolo Sorrentino film almost. And the colour of the seats as well, they're beautiful.
Yeah, no, really cosy. I mean, we inherited the seats, not sure of their age, but they're definitely weathering well. But definitely compared to new seats, they are kind of smaller, but they're still super comfy. So people quite often mention how nice the seats are. So we did think when we arrived, of course, we will upgrade the seats, but actually we thought we don't need to because they're lovely, and actually a lovely old velvet cinema seat. You don't often see them anymore.
So how many seats have we got in here total?
We've got 111. When the cinema was first opened, it actually had 155 seats. So they were different seats and smaller, and obviously people were used to being much more kind of crammed in and much closer to a much smaller screen. But it's been 111 seats for about the last sort of 10, 15 years. And that feels about right in here now. And just the right size. When we do have a full house, it feels just right. There's just a really nice feeling. And especially, as I said, when we have something like a silent film where we have someone on the piano, we don't have to have any extra speakers or anything on the piano because the acoustics are so lovely in here. And then you just basically get a room full of people laughing at a Buster Keaton film with a live piano, and it's fantastic. Or you get an amazing, fantastic action film and people enjoying it. But either way, the sound works really nicely in this space.
So since the 1960s, you've had 4 different owners here each. Was it always a cinema?
We're not sure how old the building is. There's old pictures of Broadstairs from 250 years ago where there is something this kind of shape on this spot. But we don't know for sure. But we know that about 110 years ago, it was converted from being a kind of commercial building into being a hall, which was actually converted to be a hall to show a collection of armour of a local man who was an armour expert. This was kind of post-Edwardian England when armour and pageantry and medieval world was quite a big thing. So he had actually bought the building and turned it into a museum. He died shortly afterwards. It got sold to the council. They rented it out for 50 years or so. And one of the things they rented it out for more in the 50s was film shows in the summer holidays and things. And they would just have 16mm cartoon shows projecting on a sheet. something like that. And that would happen in here. And then in the 50s and the 60s, there were two massive cinemas in Broadstairs. There were about 1,600 cinema seats in Broadstairs at one point. Wow. Both the cinemas closed down within sight of each other in the 50s and 60s. Suddenly, this was the only place in town where you could see a film. And so a local cinema entrepreneur who owned another cinema in a town nearby converted it. And it was officially a cinema, at that point, the Windsor Cinema, from 65.
And here we are.
And here we are.
And what did Corinna think walking in for the first time?
This is amazing. I've completely left who I am. It's not only what the film has given me, but it's how I felt as I walked into the building, how I felt as I found my seat, how I felt as I looked around before it started, how I felt as I watched the ads. All of that is part of what is fantastic about this. And I think that was a real kind of key period. In this cinema, some of the best screenings we've had like that is we have a piano and we show silent films with live piano, and we have full houses for those almost every time. And one of the great pleasures of that is the fact that you are basically showing a film with gags that someone invented 100 years ago, yeah. And there's no sound. And literally the whole room is just laughing their heads off. And we get kids in here watching Buster Keaton laughing their heads off and all of that. And you're just like, there's literally no way that 10-year-old kid would have watched this film at home and got any of this from it at all. And it's just absolutely, like you say, it's that kind of everyone in it together.
And even the slightly, further on from the silent film, the Laurel and Hardys and Marx Brothers and things like that, there's so much great physical comedy.
Absolutely.
That it's great for kids. And I think you're right. If it was just something that was on TV, as any of us were flicking through, we're so used to the crashes and bells and whistles.
Totally. Absolutely. And that thing that, the notion that there is no sound, if you even say that to a kid, they'll just be like, well, not interested. So it's amazing what that being in the cinema transforms it into something else.
So why do you think that some people are quite happy to just go to the cinema with their friends if there's a new blockbuster, but they could take it or leave it? They're happy to watch a film at home. Whereas for other people, it's a big part of their lives. They're happy to go on their own, or they have to have their cinema viewing experience.
There's a lot about the social experience, that literally it's not just about sitting on the sofa. And I don't know how much you're going to be talking about, the impact of the pandemic, but the notion of it's not just about sitting on the sofa with a cup of tea, and there you go. It is the whole journey and the pre-arrangement, and if you're going with a friend and then thinking about having a drink before or after, or it's that whole social thing. So yes, you in effect have that hour and a half, 2 hours of this immersive artistic experience. But still, for me and my husband, whose background is absolutely more in kind of cultural cinema, world cinema, independent cinema, really where our heart lies, we'll still go and watch Batman, we'll still go and watch Mission Impossible and love it, so it's kind of like they're different experiences. But I think absolutely in terms of why would people still come to the cinema rather than just stay at home is just that sense of occasion, immersion, social, and just literally the technology is so fantastic now that even in a little space like this, our sound and picture is just, and I'm not just showing off it, it's just outstanding. For what people's expectations might be of a little seaside indie cinema, our technology is phenomenal, so you get this amazing immersive experience, and that's what makes it special.
How much do you work with the community? Does it go beyond the cinema?
We hire out to local charities and school groups and charity fundraisers and things like that. So we'll work with all of those, and those will definitely come back. They tend not to be one-offs, they tend to do repeats. So we'll do a bit of that. Also, what we're trying to do more and more of is giving free talks about the film industry or about the films that we're showing, just to try and sort of, in effect, add value and bring more people in. Someone who might not have been interested in the film by itself. We want to kind of pique people's interest so that actually people who might never have thought of coming here do.
But there's just such a feeling of when you walk into somewhere like the Palace, and it's just instantly special the moment you come through the door.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the staff are huge when it comes to independent cinemas for giving particularly the difference between us and a multiplex in terms of kind of they're really part of the fabric of it.
And the building itself has a long, rich history. How did it all begin?
Oh my God. This building, as we think, is, round about 200 years old, but we're not sure. And it did have a big revamp about 100 years ago, and it was turned into a hall. When it was turned into a cinema in the 60s, it was turned into the shape it's in now. They kind of added the rake and added the sort of locked-in projection box and all of that. So all of that is basically has been exactly the same for over 50 years. but when they did it in the 60s, that maybe people's expectations of what a cinema of this kind should be were a bit lower. And it didn't actually have any form of heating or air conditioning until about 15 years ago, which is before our time. And there was a period that people still remember, and someone came in and told us specifically about a period in the 80s where it was absolutely so freezing in here that when you came in and bought your ticket, you would literally be issued with a hot water bottle and a blanket, like no exaggeration. And they would literally come round half the way through the film and ask if you wanted your hot water bottle changed and reheated.
Incredible.
Also, at that point, sort of 70s, 80s, maybe into the early 90s, Broadstairs is not short of pubs. There are literally 3 pubs on the corner up the road. The ladies in here would literally ask for people's orders, go and get the pints from up the road and bring them down.
And that's not something you do anymore?
Actually, no. It sounds awful, doesn't it? Because the pubs are still only there. Yeah, no, but now we're licensed. But I thought they were licensed as well, so I don't know what was going on. I don't know why. Maybe just people just thought whatever you're selling is not big enough. I want a pint. But I don't know. But literally that happened. So there was a bit of that kind of stuff.
What about the future and cinema's place within it? I think the sad truth is that over the pandemic, we have lost some places. You know, in this country, in other countries, some places just, they couldn't keep their doors open any longer. And it would be so sad if that was something that continued, when all we really have to do is make sure that we visit that place we've always planned to visit, to go and see a film or to buy a membership or a ticket. And it's that simple.
Absolutely. And I do think, though, I mean, not getting too far into pandemic conversation, but I do think we have been lucky in this country. I don't really know to compare to other countries really, but I know we've been lucky that there has been ring-fence money for independent cinemas. And, you know, there were moments earlier last year when the majors were just like, can we have a bit of that money? And it's like, no, this is purely for independents. So we're really lucky that that happened. And we've been fortunate to get some of that grant money as well, which is keeping us afloat. So it kind of felt like that was a vote of confidence from both sides. We've got it from, in effect, government side. And like you say, it's just the community remembering we're still here and taking a chance. It is a unique experience that you don't get it if you are watching it in an open air screening or in a drive-in screening. You don't get it if you're watching it at home. You don't get it if you're going to a multiplex and seeing a massive screen or watching, you know, 3D or anything like that. It is a completely different kind of experience going to this kind of cinema. And there's so many different kinds of cinemas. So I think in terms of its future, it feels like, why would it stop? Because anything else that has come up to replace it has found its place, has kind of shuffled down, and then cinema's still there, and then cinema finds a new way of coming up. And definitely for things like indie cinemas, they need that support, and they need, you know, to have people who understand that this is never going to be a money-making. We're never ever going to get rich, quite the reverse in this line of work. We're in the wrong line of work. But it's absolutely, it's got a place in society. It's not just about choosing it as an option for a hobby, as it were. It's not just a passing thing which is peripheral. It's really part of society. So I think that's the thing about whether it's got a future. It's just like, can anyone imagine what it'd be like if we woke up tomorrow and there were 0 cinemas? It's just like, what would we have lost? Could you really even describe what would be lost? Because you would not be able to replicate it in any way, sort of thing. So at some point, someone is going to open another palace-type cinema down here. And what we need to do, really, is to still be here and still be thriving when that happens. So that there is definitely room, there's definitely the audience for more than just one of these down here, but we just want to make sure that we're definitely here and doing all that we can.
I think there'll be a lot of people watching at the moment who are very excited to plan their next visit to come and see you. Yeah. What can they look forward to when they buy a ticket to the Palace?
I think when they come through the door, they will definitely get a lovely big smile from whoever works here. And basically, we've got the tiny foyer when people come in, which people can be quite surprised by. But once they've got their ticket and we're licensed, so once they've got their glass of wine and they walk in, what tends to happen is people just have that ooh moment, because it's so lovely and cozy and kind of pretty in here. And then they'll settle down in one of these nice cozy seats and then watch some amazing film from somewhere around the world and have this completely immersive experience, and then pop out and they'll find themselves a few feet away from the sea.
And the pubs.
And the pubs. Bonus.
The lovely and cosy and pretty Palace Cinema, a gem in the crown of Broadstairs.